So you're thinking about picking up the cheapest 7.3 Powerstroke you can get. I did that 10 years ago over here and 1 year ago over there. There are consequences to this decision. Let's run through some of them. Now, while it may seem like a good idea to spend the least you possibly can on a truck, one thing to keep in mind is a distinct possibility that absolutely nothing has been done to the truck for decades. That was the case with this truck. The guy I bought it from told me he had it for 8 years and that he did nothing to it. It never had any work done. It never needed it. The only thing he ever had an issue with was it blew a fuse when you went wide open. I've never had it happen. In fact, the only thing he actually knew that he had done to this truck was replace the speed sensor. But other than that, nothing had been done. And since nothing had been done, I've had to do a lot. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're going to buy one of these trucks, you need to take about $3,500 and set it aside, because you will put a transmission in it. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I kid you not, 3 weeks into my ownership of this truck, the transmission exploded. And when I say exploded, what I mean is the seal on the front pump of the transmission blew out. It blew the seal out in front of my shop, and I was heading to my parents', and inside of 13 miles, it blew all the transmission fluid out of it. And when I dropped the pan at my parents', it was just a slurry of about a quart of transmission fluid and a whole bunch of friction material. And I had just done that. I had just serviced the transmission like a week before, right? But they need everything. And it's not so much like the big things that they need: transmission, injectors, glow plugs. It's all the little stuff that crops up that will just mess you up. And bizarre things, especially if you live in the Rust Belt. The spring hangers on this truck were completely wasted. Tie rods were gone. Ball joints were good. Is that a V12? No, it's a dozen crotch rockets. The door handles didn't work right. The ABS system was screwed, is still screwed. The brakes were a disaster. The brake lines were worse. You know, it really, it can be very costly to fix all this stuff. So just because the initial price, you save a lot, all the work that's going to come after it is going to easily negate that. The IDM fried on this thing. I've had wiring issues with it. The range selector on the side, I forget what it's called, but basically the thing that tells the computer what gear the transmission is in, freaked out on it, where it started downshifting randomly. And actually, I'm not sure if I got that fixed. It was really bad in the rain, and I don't usually drive this truck in the rain, especially since I bought that one. And then these older trucks are harder to work on than the newer ones. The diagnostic capability is nothing like it is on the Super Duties. Although I love these trucks, I think I like them more. In reality, working on them can be a challenge. Those ain't no picnic either, but these things can really send you for a loop. And of course, because these are trucks and they do work, they are oftentimes in really bad shape, especially when you're looking at the cheaper ones. So it all depends on what you're after. If you want something that's going to look nice, the cheapest certainly isn't going to be where it's at. But if you want it to do work, then you don't have to worry about it getting all beat up. But you're going to have to do work to the truck to get it up to fighting form. A lot of these older ones, they're not going to take very well if you just throw a trailer on it, especially if it hasn't been used that hard in the last few years. Time is a killer on these trucks. Anybody who says, oh, it's not the age, it's the miles, has never worked on an old truck, because they have odd little weird quirks because they are old. And then, of course, the worst enemy of all, especially if you're up here in the rust belt, is, well, it's rust. Look at that thing. There is not much structure left in this box. The front is actually sitting on top of wood blocks. This one ain't much better. Rust is a killer, it is a killer, it is a killer. The rear shackles on this one rotted out. They completely rotted to nothing. Anytime you got to do work, you have to fight with rust. Even just taking the tires off can be a battle. But there are some things you can do to try to put the odds in the favor that you aren't buying a complete basket case turd. And I have a few rules for this. Number one, I don't buy anything that's been modified. And that's getting harder and harder to do as time moves on. But if it's got a factory radio and a factory airbox, I'm probably more inclined to buy it. I don't want something tuned. I don't want something that's been messed with. I don't want something lifted. I want it to be as stock as possible. The only modifications I'm willing to buy are things that were done to it to just make it better at doing its job. That gold truck, it's got a chip in it of some variety. I don't know. It runs pretty strong, but for the most part, it doesn't roll coal like crazy. It isn't bonkers fast. But what the guy I got it from, who's a friend of mine, what he told me was he just got it chipped to make it shift better. And maybe just a little bit more power for towing. But other than that, and some grandpa style mud flaps and a tonneau cover, this truck is as stock as it gets. This one is just stock. It's never had anything done to it. I can tell because it's slow as sin. And I don't buy something from somebody younger than me. Now, the older I'm getting, the harder that is. But basically what the rule boils down to is don't buy something from a kid. Now, if you are a kid, sorry, but you guys are hell on your shit. In fact, the guy I got this from had a couple teenagers, and he said that the only real times this truck ever had issues was when they were driving it. Imagine that. But I bought this truck from a guy who was 10 years older than me, and I bought that truck from a guy who was 20 years older than me. So, I mean, we're talking, the rule holds true. Now, I'm not saying don't buy the cheapest one you can get. What I am saying is if you do buy the cheapest one you can get, just keep in mind it might not be the best. That actually pinched my hand. I love these old trucks, and for the most part, they're great. They're pretty reliable. They have decent enough power to get the job done, but not so much they're actually going to hurt themselves. And for the most part, the issues that you're going to have to deal with aren't much different than the issues you have to deal with anything else. The only real problem is the parts for these trucks are exceedingly expensive, whereas if you're talking about a gas-through truck, man, $100 pretty much solves your problem, right? The parts are pretty cheap. These, the cheapest parts are over $100. A lot of them are somewhere around the $400 or $500 range, depending on what you're looking at. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Till next time, guys, be safe, and I'll see you later.